To present to you today as part of the Eskom team our FY21 financial results. I would like to acknowledge the presence also of our chairman, Professor Makgoba, as well as our Chief Financial Officer, who will be joining me, Caleb Kassem, and our Chief Operating Officer, Jan Oberholzer, who is here to provide us with support in the event that there are operational questions. Right, let's move on to the actual presentation. The customary disclaimer, just to introduce you to myself and to Caleb, and then let's move straight on into the highlights. There have also been some challenges. So we regret that we have to report a net after-tax loss of 18.9 billion. And as you will see later on as Caleb unpacks the results, this is largely attributable to the fact that we continue to have an unsustainable debt burden, which causes us to pay in the past financial year net debt service cost of 31.5 billion rand. COVID-19, which has become part of the new normal, of course, affected us quite significantly, particularly in the first half of the financial year. Overall sales volume were down 6.7%. Headcount was reduced by 4.5%, and as a consequence, we were able to contain our employee cost. We are now sitting at a staff complement of 42,749, which is down from about 44,772 at the end of the previous financial year. We were able to reduce our debt by some 81.9 billion. Some of that is due to government chipping in with support of 56 billion, but also due to a strengthening in the rand, which played a role in the conversion of our dollar-denominated and euro-denominated debt into rand, but also thanks to some very prudent cost savings measures that management was able to implement. Our generating plant performance reduced to 64.19, but this is due to the fact that we improved our planned maintenance, so we'll cover that in a bit more detail. Transmission and distribution did particularly well, and their performance has improved, and we have more work to do on our environmental performance. Business separation, very important strategic imperative for Eskom, is picking up pace, and we have completed our functional separation, and we are now looking forward to completing legal separation of our transmission business, a key milestone in the legal separation and restructuring by December 21, but I have to point out that this is subject to the achievement of some regulatory and legal milestones which are outside of our control. Medupi and Kusile have performed well, our two projects. So Unit 1 achieved commercial operation on the 31st of July. So all units have now been handed over from the project team to the operations team. So we are now in a position where the people responsible for running the plant are now in full control of all the units. And that signifies the completion of this project that started in 2007. There are some environmental mitigation projects that we will be undertaking at that site, particularly the flue gas desulfurization project, coming in at an estimated cost of 38 billion rand, which we will be launching in the near future in order to ensure compliance with air quality emission standards, but also the loan conditions imposed by the World Bank. Kusile has also done well from a project perspective. We added 2 units to commercial operation, about 1,600 megawatts that was added to the grid. But then regrettably, after the end of the financial year, we reported a major explosion at Medupi Unit 4, where we had a hydrogen incident on the generator at this unit, which caused significant damage to that unit. We are still in the process of investigating, and once the results of those investigations are known, we will be able to share more information with you on that. COVID-19 had a significant impact on us. We saw initially, when lockdown was first imposed, a huge drop-off in demand between 7,500 megawatts to 11,000 megawatts, and that caused us to have to cut back on our generation output very substantially. We took advantage of that to do some short-term opportunity maintenance, but obviously from a financial perspective, that did have a negative impact on our results from a sales perspective. We were fortunate in that we were able to very quickly respond to the need for our employees to work remotely. Our group IT team did a particularly fine job to enable most of our office-bound employees to continue working without any interruption, so we are grateful for that. It is also my sad duty to recognize at this point in time that we lost 128 employees and 17 contractors to COVID-19. It is also my sad duty to again remember the former chair and also the interim chief executive of Eskom, Mr. Jabu Mabuza, who sadly passed away of COVID-19, and we recognize and remember his contribution to this organization. To improve the resilience of the organization to COVID-19, we have rolled out a vaccination program that is available to all employees and contractors at all of our major sites, including Megawatt Park. And while uptake has not been as quick as we would have liked, many of our employees have already made use of this opportunity. Briefly, on the integrated strategy that Eskom is implementing, and I think it's important to emphasize that it is like a jigsaw puzzle where all of the pieces do fit together. So there are four major industry trends, the so-called 4Ds: decarbonization, decentralization, digitization, and democratization. And these underlying secular trends, mega trends, drive our strategic response to a restructuring and rapidly changing electricity supply industry in South Africa. So first of all, we've got to fix the organization, we've got to turn it around, and in that regard we're looking at operations recovery, addressing the income statement, the balance sheet, driving business separation and restructuring, and then also improving our culture, our corporate culture, into a high-performance culture, all the while keeping our people committed and engaged with the objectives of the organization. This short-term turnaround objective fits into our long-term objectives to pursue financial and operational sustainability, to enable and facilitate a long-term competitive electricity supply industry. And in this regard, again, we have to stress the importance of opening up the industry to ever more investments, particularly from private sector players, as we seek to modernize the power system and ultimately to strive for net zero carbon emissions by 2050. This is part of a just energy transition. Clearly, as we gradually increase the share of low and no carbon electricity generation technologies to the overall South African electricity industry, we have to ensure that the socio-economic impact on those who are invested in the coal value chain is as limited as possible. And in fact, as we make this transition, that we drive opportunities for greater socio-economic participation particularly in the context of some very disappointing unemployment statistics announced recently. Moving on then, these are the people driving the turnaround, the EXCO team. We have made quite a strong effort to fill vacancies so that we have as few acting positions as possible. So we have made good progress there, and I think from a gender perspective in particular, we have made great advances. As you will see in our media release, we've also improved on almost all of our demographics in terms of statistics. So from both a race and a gender perspective, we are doing better. The exception here is people with disabilities, where we are still lagging behind, so that's a focus area going forward. In terms of the turnaround objectives, quickly just addressing some of those areas, we look to improve the income statement. This was very difficult against a backdrop of a 6.7% decrease in sales. However, of course, we were able to obtain an 8.76% increase in our tariffs, so that did bolster the top line, augmented by a number of favorable court judgments that we obtained against the NERSA decisions taken previously. We paid very close attention to costs, and we were able to deliver cost savings of 14.4 billion rand above our target that we set ourselves, and we were able to contain our primary energy costs to less than the rate of inflation. So again, a pleasing performance there, despite the fact that we had to run our open cycle gas turbines longer and harder due to a shortage of generation capacity. The operating profit performance, I think, is quite creditable. This is earnings before interest and taxes, and that is in positive territory, 5.8 billion rand. But when you add in the very significant interest burden that we carry due to our very high debt, then it becomes apparent that the single biggest factor constraining Eskom from being financially sustainable is our debt burden that we carry. Caleb will elaborate more on this when he addresses you later on. We are taking continued steps to seek to strengthen the balance sheet. And as I said, we were able to reduce our gross debt to just over 400 billion by the end of the financial year, thanks to equity support from the government, tight cost control, but also a favorable movement in the exchange rate. We are looking good from a funding perspective, so more work to be done, but things are looking very much under control there. Disappointingly, municipal arrear debt grew by 7.3 billion rand to 35.3 billion rand, and that number has since the end of the financial year increased further to about 39 billion rand. So clearly a solution to non-payment by certain municipalities is a priority for the political task team led by Deputy President Mabuza. We are also looking at all of our opportunities that we've got to uncover and unlock cash from non-core assets. So that work is ongoing, and we've also announced the sale of some unused buildings in our property portfolio, and that trend is likely to continue. From an operations perspective, as I've said, our generating plant performance disappointing, but one should see this against a very substantial increase in our planned maintenance. And you may recall that shortly after I joined in January of last year, I indicated that we would be increasing the risk of potential load shedding as we carry out the necessary maintenance in order to catch up with the backlog in maintenance that had built up in prior years. And I think Philip Dukashe, our Group Executive of Generation, and his team have been doing a particularly fine job. Early days at this point in time, but we are seeing some very pleasing trends emerging. Also from a transmission and distribution perspective, Sekemotso Skeppers and Monde Bala, both their teams have seen an improvement in operational performance there. And again, more work to be done at Kendal in particular to ensure that we remain compliant, repairing the damage occasioned by industrial action in 2018. Business separation, divisionalization was completed in March 2020. We have since reached functional separation, which means that all of the different functions are now apportioned to the 3 businesses that we are setting up. Again, we are on track from an Eskom perspective to deliver legal separation by December 21, but we are awaiting regulatory approvals, for example, the allocation of a transmission license to the new legal entity, which we've already established from NERSA. Generation distribution will follow by December 2022. People and culture, I think we are doing quite well in driving a high-performance culture. I think there's a new spirit afoot in Eskom, and I'm very pleased to see that the commitment of our staff to delivering electricity to South Africa is alive and well, and I see many examples across our organization of people really delivering exceptional work, and I want to express my gratitude as well to the management and staff of Eskom for their contribution in ensuring that we navigate these very challenging times during COVID. The safety performance I'll talk about in a minute, but that is a very clear performance of morale in an organization. And again, you can see there that we've done really well. An LTI, lost time injury frequency rate, of 0.22 is a truly exceptional performance. And again, well done to everyone involved. So business separation, just taking a bit of a deep dive on that. The roadmap published by the Department of Public Enterprises provides for the restructuring of Eskom from a vertically integrated utility into 3 wholly owned separate legal entities, and that process is well on the way. And we've developed an operating model to support the accountability for each division as well as for each function. And I think that has been implemented quite successfully. The divisions have been capacitated, so people have been relinked, moved from their centralized head office functions into the divisions to give greater oversight and also accountability to those divisions. And we are now in the process of legally separating. The timelines are aggressive and they are challenging, but we have done, I think...
All right, we come out of that briefing. Eskom releasing its financial results for the financial year ended March 2021. Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter saying there that financial results were challenging, announcing a net loss after tax of 18.9 billion rands, talking about COVID-19 being one of those factors, including sale volumes going down by 6.7%. He's also announced that 128 staff members of Eskom were lost due to COVID, making those announcements there. De Ruyter saying that this is obviously, the loss is a result of unsustainable debt burden and COVID-19. All right, that concludes that. We will bring you more of the analysis throughout the program, or rather the channel around those results. Obviously, much anticipated results there from the power utility.